Hello, my name is Rachel McLeod, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker and emotional wellness coach. And today I'm here with Kirsten, and I wanted to introduce you all to her. She is just a treasure and a joy. And I've really been looking forward to this interview because I love to hear Kirsten talk. And I don't know if I've ever told you that, but when you talk about what's coming up from your inner world and when I get to watch how your brain pulls things in and then it comes out of your mouth, I'm just like, it's so clear. And it's just like, yes, yes, yes. Anyway, and I'm sure that really helps you in your profession, that people really want to pay attention to what you have to say, but I'm one of those people. And so, but I want to introduce you to her because she is an amazing mom and amazing professional. I'll let her introduce herself. And so welcome, Kirsten, and go ahead and
Thank you. Yes, my name is Kirsten, and I am a mom to 3 kids. 2 of them are teenagers, and the youngest just started middle school, so I no longer have real babies anymore. And I'm a teacher. I am a reading teacher, and I also coach teachers about reading, and pretty much my whole professional life has been spent working with children in poverty and children who have a lot of needs. And so reading is just one of those needs. And it manifests sometimes in them needing lots of extra help. And so I get to do that. And I also love to, and I'm a teacher. Okay, we got it.
Here we go. Yep, carry on.
I also love theater, and I do theater locally, and love to sing and love to do musical theater. So that's just a few things about me.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I was doing some tech behind the screens, but I'm live now and I've got everything set up. So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and post them. I'm paying attention. And let's dive in, Kirsten, and ask you some questions and hear about how you eliminated panic attacks and other things. What was your life like before you found inner world transformation?
It's interesting because I've had a lot of ups and downs through my life, and by all accounts, most people think of me as a pretty successful, upbeat, all that stuff. I would say the way that I got through life was just to power through trauma, mind over matter, be successful, hide the bad stuff, shove yourself forward, get it done. Like, that was how I was functioning. And I functioned that way for a really long time. And then all of a sudden, and really it's been over the course of years, but all of a sudden my body was like, no, you're not going to do this anymore. And I started having panic attacks. And my panic attacks, I had a few here and there throughout my 30s, but they really started to come on later on. And I would get, I didn't even know I was having panic attacks because it wasn't the typical heart pounding, I can't breathe. I would actually go physically numb. My whole body would go numb, like I couldn't move. And I could feel my heart pounding, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. And that would happen to me sometimes out of the blue and for no reason. I didn't even have triggers. I didn't know what my triggers were. And so I would just be sitting in my home and this would happen. I'd be in the car and it would happen. I wouldn't know why, wouldn't know what was going on. And so that was, I think, probably the worst of it. But also I just really had a difficult time experiencing joy. And I'm a pretty happy person. So for me, that was really hard to just feel really blank. And I was trying to be happy and I couldn't. And so I think that by the time I found you, Rachel, that's pretty much where I was.
Right on. Absolutely. And for you, what was the hardest part about finding yourself in this place where you were numb and you're not feeling very much joy and you're having these panic attacks out of anywhere and everywhere?
I think, I talked to you for the first time right after Christmas, and Christmas has always been a holiday that I love, right? It's been my thing since I was a kid. And the year that I had a Christmas and couldn't be happy during that entire season, couldn't enjoy my children, felt terrible, couldn't even fake it enough to try. I mean, I was faking it, but not real well. That's when I knew that I just was like, that was it. So what I started to feel was kind of dissociated from the people that I loved. And I knew I wanted to be with those people, but like I couldn't feel anything. I was so I was in so much grief and so much pain and so much hurt that I just was like trying to be happy mom at Christmas. And I just remember feeling terrible and feeling like I didn't experience joy one time during my favorite season. And so that was essentially that, and all the panic attacks was finally what got me to move forward.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I almost felt like I'd be at a family event or be at a Christmas thing and I'd be watching everybody else like I wasn't there. Like I felt that like pulled out of what was going on around me. And so I knew that wasn't where I don't want to be an observer, right? I want to experience. So I needed to get back in there. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
did you start to notice your kids or your husband being like noticing that you were struggling, or like did they start interacting with you differently?
I think they knew for a long time because I had had some really significant events that caused some really massive trauma and grief that almost kind of re-caused trauma. And I think they knew from that time on. I just think that I think they sensed it all that time. I think I really thought it had hit the worst at that point at the holidays. But I think they knew I wasn't well. And they knew that I was really sad for, probably 8 months. And yeah, they knew.
And what did you try before you tried integral transformation? What other interventions did you try, or other?
I have been in and out of therapy, like talk therapy, since I was probably in my early 20s, because I have a significant amount of childhood trauma. And so I was dealing with stuff, I started dealing with depression, like in my late teens, early 20s. And so I did talk therapy. I've done all kinds of like nutritional stuff. I've done, you know, exercise and medication and like all kinds of things, and felt some relief. I will say all those things gave me some relief, but I really was at a point in my life where I kind of thought that I was always going to have a hole inside of me that was never going to be filled up, no matter what I did. And so I used to say all the time to my husband, yeah, I just have this hole that can't be filled. Like that's who I am because of what happened to me. And I think what started to happen is the hole just got bigger and bigger. It was like screaming out for something. And I was willing to live with it. And then I couldn't live with it. Right. So I'd done a lot of things, but they all kind of got me in this medium place. And I didn't want to be in the medium place.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 It's powerful. And so how did you end up discovering integral transformation?
It's kind of weird. I was talking to a Facebook moms group of mine, and I said, does anyone know anybody who does like rapid eye movement, like therapy? Does anyone know anybody in the area? Because we are kind of close in proximity. Does anyone know anybody that does anything? And a friend of mine tossed out, you might want to look into Rachel, because I know she's in the area and she does all kinds of stuff around, this type of thing. She might do some eye stuff. She might do some other things. You just might want to look into her. And I was like, okay. And so then I started looking on the website, and then you were doing these things where you're like, give me a call. Let's have a call. Let's talk. And I was really scared to do it, but I also was like, listen, I cannot be doing this anymore. Right. So I just made an online appointment, and there you go.
Okay. And then, so you started the program.
Mhm.
What were the initial changes that you started noticing as you started to do this inner world transformation work?
I had some really significant changes in like the first week. I mean, like a week and a half. We had some really major things happen, you and me, pretty early on. And I started to, I mean, for like 3 days after we talked, my panic attacks got worse. Like my body was like, hell no, I'm not giving this up. We're going to stay here. But then it started to slowly subside. So one of the first things I actually lost was the panic attacks. And that was pretty significant for me. When I could feel like I was in my body all the time, like that was, that's all I needed. It took me about a week and a half, and my husband was like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because you seem different. And I was, and I knew I was.
Mm.
So I just started to feel calmer. I started to feel like I had some really concrete interventions I could do when things weren't going my way. And somehow that helped me to feel like um, I was less out of or I was more in control, right? I was more in control. And so then I wasn't panicking about, well, what if this happens? Like I really felt, I started to feel like I had my feet under me again. And then I could work on some of the like hairier stuff that is more internal and older and all that. But yeah, it was good. I think I lucked out that things just click, click, click real fast for me at first. And so I was really able to get some ugly stuff gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm over here chuckling because I remember in the second week, I don't remember when it was, but you came on and we were celebrating, and you were just like, I hear this voice in my head, and she's nice. Like, who is that?
I forgot about that. That's so funny that you remember that because
Remember that?
and to talk about that, like my inner voice was not nice. She said terrible things to me. She would be like, I'd be driving along. I mean, I remember you and I talked about this, but one morning I was brushing my teeth and clear as day, like someone was in my bathroom with me. You're a liar. Just out of nowhere. And I remember thinking, that's me. That's what I hear all the time. And so by that was really early on. And I remember being like, whoa, like I think though that was the first time that it shocked me. Because before that I just kind of took it for granted. But then like about week 2, I heard some voice in my head that was like, yeah, that's fine. Or you don't have to do that. And I remember thinking, who's that? That's not the voice in the bathroom. That's a nice person in there. And it really was kind of fascinating to hear my inner voice, like that tape that had been saying ugly things all along, just kind of started to turn off. And when she was saying terrible things, I was way more aware of her. Like I was way more aware of like, no, we're not doing that. And so I became able to discern the difference between like automatic kind of repetitive thoughts and what the right thing was, right? Who did I want talking to me? And so I think that was fascinating. But you're right, I totally forgot that I was like, oh, that was a nice voice. Who is this person? Oh, gee.
We laughed for a while.
They-
That was and and that's something that happens 100% of the time, but I don't know when it's going to happen. And so
right.
I just kind of wait for it, but for you, I remember just you saying that in the second week, and I was like, well, yes, how about that?
Oh, she can be nice. Yeah.
Right, that's right. Awesome. Awesome. And you had a couple of other really big wins, I remember in the very beginning. I remember you saying something, I think it might have been even in the third week or so, the first 3 weeks or so with your son, and how
Oh.
you had been looking at him with so much anxiety and worry.
Mhm.
Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a huge breakthrough. And I think that quite literally changed my life. You and I had this kind of talk about um, why I was having so much anxiety around my youngest child and his needs and what was going on with us. And it felt like, the only way I can put it is it felt like a tangled up knot. Like
Hmm.
everything he did was somehow attached to something I did. I loved him fully. We were really enmeshed, but it felt sticky. Like it wasn't ever easy. It was always hard. Um, he, from the time he was born, had a lot of extra needs and was, I guess the way to put it is he's unsettled in the world. He's just always a little bit unsettled. And somehow I had taken that on as being my fault and my doing. And so because of that, I was always in this sort of relationship with him where every time I was looking at what he was doing, I was thinking, how did I cause that? What's wrong with me? And I wasn't really allowing him to be who he was as his own person. And I was somehow taking credit for everything, or at least the bad stuff. But that set up a really ugly dynamic between the two of us. And even though he loved me very much and I loved him very much, it was never like we didn't get along. It just always felt hard. And I remember after you and I talked, I got off the phone with you. I went to my husband and I said, he is not a thing. He's not a person that needs to be fixed. He's not a puzzle that needs to be solved. He's his own person. And we are going to stop treating him like he needs to be fixed. It was just and we both, my husband and I both just, and because of that, and giving him that space and being able to be okay with his, whatever he's doing in the moment, he became himself more fully. And it was beautiful to watch him ease into who he was meant to be, my son, because I wasn't all tangled up in his mess. And I just didn't realize how much that was possible when the dynamic had been 10 years of this, like why isn't this? How come this is going on? What did I do this time? And when I let it all go and was able to release all that, he really has thrived. He's thrived, and he and I have it way easier. And so I think I feel more successful as a mother, and he feels more successful in his own skin, and we're better, the two of us. And my husband too. So really the three of us and the whole family is a little bit more able to just, I think the rhythm is there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just kind of interesting because it's hard to explain to people how much trauma can get in the way and trip us up,
Yeah.
and how it can be pulling down or like getting in the way or taking up space in our relationships. And once that's removed, it's like, I mean, it's almost like magic happens, like connection and bonding and freedom happens just because that trauma is just out of the way.
Right, right. And, in some way, I think I kind of felt like I had passed my trauma to him, even though like he doesn't have the trauma I had, that like I had genetically given him something that he couldn't outrun. And so I felt like guilt about that. But then I was like that just has to go. That there's no space in our relationship for that, because we're both dancing around whatever this weird thing is, and we're not being our best selves. And so when I just let him be who he's meant to be, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It's pretty, yeah.
That's wonderful. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, for you, what was different about the work, the 20 years of talk therapy that you did, and the tools and the strategies that you used in inner transformation to get you kind of life-changing results in such a short amount of time?
Well, I I think talk therapy has a place, and I think there was a piece of me that felt like I needed that talk therapy. Like I needed a therapist at some point to tell me like what happened to you was a mess. Like this thing that happened to you, messy. This is one of the reasons why you're doing this, and this. But the thing is that, that saying of like, knowing is half the battle. Well, it's only half the battle. Maybe even less than half. I knew why I was hurting, but the hurting was still there. Like knowing it and knowing why it's there doesn't actually solve it. Like that's kind of like knowing my toe hurts because somebody hit it with a hammer. It doesn't make it hurt less. And so for me, I felt like, yeah, I'm still depressed. I still had this hard thing happen. Talking about it does resolve some things, but it didn't resolve like my brain patterns. It didn't resolve my inner voice. It didn't resolve the habitual things that my body and brain had done for 40 some years, right? It didn't do that. And so, whereas I felt like the inner world transformation, the strategies that I learned were, I mean, I hate to say magic because it's not science, but it felt like I just do this and my brain does something totally different than it has ever done. How is that possible? And so, but I had to believe it, right? Like, I remember you telling me once, even if you don't believe it's working, just tap on the fact that you don't think it works. Like, just tap on that then. Like, you just do not put up with any excuses. You don't put it, the barrier is there and you just tap on that then. Like, you just don't, you know what I mean? We don't do this. This isn't happening around and around and around. It's like, no, we'll just bust through that. It'll be fine. And I remember thinking, really? Isn't that easy? And it did take work. I'm not saying I didn't do work. I'm not saying I took a magic pill, but it did feel like I could feel it when it was working. I could feel it. And then that just made me want more. Right. So it made it so that I was incrementally getting better and better and better, instead of like, oh, that's good enough. I was like, oh, now if I was this good, I could be that good,
And that problem over there, I'm coming for you.
Now I'm gonna get you. And I think, and I do think there was a part of me that just like really clicked with your personality too, of like, I'm not taking your excuses and we're not doing this. I'm a little bit like that. So I was like, oh no, now that voice is gonna go. Like, now that I know she doesn't need to be in there, goodbye. And so I started to really get the momentum. It felt like I was rolling downhill, right? But in a good way. So I think when I felt it and I felt that it was possible, then I felt unlimited in how much better I could get.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this has me thinking, because some challenges that some people have with doing any of this work is that their trauma is so painful.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'm not going there. And
Right.
so here you're talking about it's not hurting anymore. You can do this work and it just doesn't hurt.
Right.
Anymore. How were you able to face some of your tougher traumas, and was it terrible, and was it like pulling teeth, and and I mean, what was that like for you to go after stuff that maybe you would have preferred to leave over yonder somewhere unprocessed?
Well, it's two things. One is I tried the thing where you just tough it out and you leave it over here. And you just try to live your life going this way, and you try to leave all that in the rearview mirror. I'd done that. And yes, that is preferable if you can make it work. But what I figured out is my body was going to come get me. Whether I was going to acknowledge that pain or not, that pain was coming for me. And so I just knew that, like, I either turn around and face it, or it will keep chasing me and it will become bigger and bigger and bigger, because when you get to the point where you can't move your body because you are in that much trauma, like, that's my body's way of telling me, like, you've run far enough, girl. Like, you don't have it in you anymore to run from this. You've got to turn around and face it. So that's one. And the other thing is, I think what I liked about your approach was that we didn't have to do it all at once. There was not this idea that, like, unless you can get to the root of this one problem, you're never going to feel better. I could chip pieces off of what was going on in my life, and every little piece made me feel a little bit better till I felt strong enough to handle stuff that was really ugly. Like, I had to handle how I felt about the death of my mother. I had to handle how I felt about the death of my brother. And I wasn't ready at the beginning to talk about those things, but I chipped off all this other stuff until the moment I was ready to get to that particular box and open it, right? And so I guess I just felt like every little piece helped, and that there wasn't this like finish line that you said, well, we have to get to this point. It was just, well, now are you ready? If you're not ready, let's leave it. Let's work over here. And I remember you saying that the more kind of brain trash that I cleared out, the more it would work on every box, even the boxes I wasn't ready to open yet. And that's what I liked, is I really did feel that. I felt like I was able to process things without even having to open the ugly box yet. I was still processing all this garbage. The voices were going away, the panic attacks were going away, and I still hadn't gotten to the ugly garbage about my brother or my mom, but I had gotten rid of some other stuff. And then when I was finally ready to go there, it was safer. The box wasn't so big, maybe it was smaller, or I had a friend with me when I was opening it or whatever, but I felt like, I didn't have to do it right away. And that since it was so cumulative, I didn't, it's kind of like, it's the weirdest thing. It's like if I can't move my leg, but if I move my finger, my leg will get stronger. That's not the way that the body works, but it is the way the brain seemed to work for me, which is that when I cleared off this part, even the stuff over here was clearing through. And so I really did feel like it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be at first when I was having these terrible panic attacks. And I remember saying to you, I don't know why I'm having these. And I feel like there's something lurking in there I don't even know. Like I remember feeling like I had some deep, dark secret I didn't even know about because it was so bad. And then little bits. And I didn't have that. So it was good.
It's good, yes.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And after the first initial changes and results that you started getting, what challenges did you face after that?
I think some of the challenges that I really had to look at were how had the sort of brain trash or the things that I had been carrying with me for so long, how had those things shaped the way I was living my life? And was I still happy to be living my life that way? So sometimes it was like doing some work actually caused me to have to look more and not necessarily do more painful work, but like, am I happy with that relationship? Do I like the way that friend treats me? Am I okay with that family member saying that to me? Before, I never would have questioned those things because I would have thought I maybe deserved that or whatever that is, right? I would have thought those things. But it caused me to start digging more because I'd stop hearing the ugly voice, and then somebody would say something ugly to me and I'd be like, wait a minute, I don't need to take that garbage from you. That's dumb. I'm not doing that. So it did cause me to have to really examine some things, but I don't think that's bad. It felt like it created a lot of work for me. Like I remember you and I had a lot of conversations around boundaries because as a person who'd suffered from trauma, I didn't have very good boundaries. And so I had to do a lot of work around like, what is a good boundary to have? And is this person violating my boundaries or am I just kind of being grumpy today? Like, this whole thing of whereas if I had had maybe what you would call a more typical childhood, I would have had someone to model those boundaries for me. I was like figuring it out for myself. So those were challenges. And there's always the challenge of like, don't let yourself slip back into that. But you know what's funny? I don't feel like I've had that much of that. I think it's because once that stuff cleared its way out of my brain, I just didn't have it anymore. I still have things I'd like to work on, but we all do, right? And I will. Those are my projects, but but I don't know. I just felt like it opened a lot of awareness, and that awareness caused me to ask a lot of questions. So that's its own kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And are any other breakthroughs that you experienced that you feel like at this time, like you just have to share them?
I think the only thing I will say, and I know this came from you, was the idea of there's this thing like when you've had kind of a rough childhood or when things haven't been the way you wanted them to be, it's easy to look at the way that your life has turned out and be like, well, if only my mom had done this, if only my dad had done this. And I really had to challenge myself to sort of like be my own hero, right? Like I am past 40 now. Nobody is going to come and fix these things for me. My mom's gone, my dad's gone. Even if I wanted them to fix the things that I feel like they didn't do right or that we needed to talk about, I don't have that anymore. So my only opportunity was to be my own hero. And I had to do a lot of that. Like, listen, what do you need? And you need to give that to yourself. Like, stop waiting around for other people to figure out what you need and give it to you. Give it to yourself. And I think that breakthrough caused a lot of ripples in my life, because it clears up relationships when you stop looking at other people to save you all the time and you just save yourself. And I think it also set up a pattern for my children to see what it looks like to take care of yourself, right? It doesn't mean I'm not still taking care of them. I know that. But that I think it's good for them to see, like, you can also do it for yourself and you don't have to wait around for someone to do it for you. And so that's a big one. And I'm still doing that. The other night I had just like the most atrocious day, because technology and teaching and being on screens and having teenagers on screens, and the whole thing was just, I came home and I was standing in the kitchen and I was like staring at a wall, and I could just feel myself like I was completely checked out. And I thought to myself, you know what you need? You need to get in bed, do some crying, and go to sleep. And I would have waited for somebody to tell me that or try to take care of me. And I would have just had like the stiff upper lip and been like on the verge of tears all night, waiting for somebody to notice that I'd had a hard day. And instead I was like, I'm out of here. I'm going to bed. And I just saved myself, right? And then the people around me know, oh, mom's had a bad day. Like, we don't need to be bugging her. And so it helps them too. They know what to do. So I think it's little stuff, but it's stuff I wouldn't have done before.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about also was clearing out the resentment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. It just makes relationships so much more clear and pure when you're not carrying all these random expectations that like were never met for you as a child into like an adult relationship. So it just makes things cleaner, if that makes sense. So
Yeah. I'm wondering, I'm curious, one of the things that the discoveries that you made, that I remember you talking about, was that you were able to receive more um, positive love, affection, attention. Can you
mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about that? Because I have women tell me this all the time, and I personally had that issue myself. So, but what do you think? What did you notice?
I think when you don't feel very worthy, or you don't feel very lovable, or like you within yourself are not feeling very good about what's going on, it does not matter all the love that people throw at you. If you can't accept it, then like, what's the point, right? You can't feel it even when people are trying to love on you, because you don't feel like you're worthy of taking it. And I also think you kind of put out this vibe of like, don't get near me because I can't take that, or I'm too tough for you, or whatever. You put out this like really protective thing. And I really have a hard time being vulnerable. And so it was an interesting case study for me to love myself enough to be vulnerable and allow other people to just do their best to love me, even if it was imperfect, right? And to soften that a little bit and to let those things in. And I think it let me feel it when people loved me. I could actually feel it. And it also made people want to try, right? Because I was like a little bit vulnerable, and I was like, it's okay. We're good here. So I definitely have done a better job of feeling it when people are loving me, but feeling like I'm worth it, feeling like I deserve it, right? And that it's not my job to love everybody else. It's also my job to let them love me. Because I was such a caretaker. I just wanted to like make sure everybody was okay. And yeah, there's not much room. If that's all you're ever doing, there's not much room for people to return the favor to you. And you kind of give off this vibe of like, I don't need you. Even if that's not really how you feel, that's what people think, right? So I've tried to soften that and be that a little bit more for everybody.
Wonderful, wonderful, awesome. And since you've graduated, where are you at today? Because you graduated in the end of February, I think, right before
Yeah,
COVID. Yeah.
right before. Hold on just a second, because I think my thing's gonna die. And so I'm gonna go holler at the boy to see if he'll bring me my charger. So hold on just a second. Hey, sweet boy. Hey, Finny. Can you do me a favor? Can you grab my charger next to my bed and bring it down for me? I'm about to die. Can you do that? It's next to my bed.
We are getting close to being at the end of our interview with Kirsten. And so if there's any questions that you have that you'd like to have me ask her, go ahead. So now, and I will get a couple of those to her.
There's me asking for something I need, right? Like, hey boy, I need this thing. The sweet 13-year-old. I was telling you this, so I'll say this to everybody else, but I have repeatedly thought that if I had not done this when I did it, which was in January, end of December, beginning of January, if I had not done what I did then, there's no way, thank you, boy, I appreciate you. There's no way I would have made it through COVID, because the anxiety level that happened during COVID for me and for every person around me was insane, right? I mean, we all felt that feeling of the uncertainty and the not knowing and the economy and everybody's world turning upside down. And my husband and I are both teachers, so suddenly we're at home all the time trying to do our jobs from home with our kids at home and 5 people in the house that never leave. And while we were very financially secure, all the people we knew around us, things were happening. My husband's dad passed away right at the beginning of COVID. So we had that. We were doing like hospice care right when COVID hit. He was staying nights somewhere else. I mean, there was so many things going on that if I had not taken care of myself when I did, and COVID had hit in the state I was in, I'm not certain what I would have done. Like, would I have had to be hospitalized? Would I have been able to be there for my husband when he was caregiving for his dying father? Would I have been able to be supportive of my mother-in-law? Would I have been able to take care of my children or do my job under high stress? I have no idea. But my gut's telling me I couldn't have made it through all that. And I did make it through all that. And I made it through with an intact family and an intact marriage and an intact job. And while it hasn't been perfect, because we all know this is not a perfect time, I was able to be centered enough and healthy enough and well enough to do it and to find ways to bring my family together and to be supportive of them. Because that's the other thing, you know, they're teenagers and there's a lot of anxiety and they're dealing with that. And if this is a time where they really do need their mom, and if I hadn't had that footing to be stable, then it would have fallen all on John. And you know, he lost his dad. There was a lot going on. So I'm glad I was able to know who I am, to believe in my worth, to center myself, to find the tools that could get me through that so that we made it through. We didn't make it through with no tears and no yelling. Those things happen. I felt like pulling my hair out on a few days, but we also had some beautiful nights of like playing cards and making family dinners and doing all the things that like, I don't know, I could have enjoyed at all. I mean, if I couldn't enjoy Christmas, how am I going to enjoy being locked in my house for 6 months? But I did. I found ways to feel joy in the midst of all that, and no panic attacks during the entire 6 months of being locked down. I'm back at work in the most crazy capacity, no panic attacks. And I often find myself being able to think about like when somebody's like yelling or cranky, I can think, man, they must be having a lot of trauma right now, which is so funny because like, I don't think that that's the perspective I would have come from had I done this work. And I feel like I inoculated myself essentially against what would have just been something terrible to go through when I was already in such a state. I was in so much pain. And I'm just glad that I found that. And I'm so thankful that I didn't wait, because it would have been really easy for me when you and I talked to be like, oh, I'll do this in a couple months. I'll do it when I have more time. I'll do it when it hasn't just been the holidays. But I was like, I'm done hurting. Let's do this. And I'm so glad I did. I feel like it was just the most divine timing because I ended up right where I need to be.
Absolutely.
Exactly what it to be.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And let me ask you this, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with the same challenges that you were facing?
I would say that I know you probably don't believe this, especially if you've been hurting for 40 years, but it can actually be better. And as someone who did 20 years of talk therapy and got some relief, and did medicine and got some relief, and did all those things and got some relief, I was the person who just thought that was as good as it was going to get. And if I had met Rachel and when I was in the harder panic attacks, just gotten back to the as good as it was going to get, that's really all I expected. And I got so much farther. I got so much past that. It doesn't mean I don't still have a bad day, but like the advice I would give is it is not impossible to heal. And you deserve to heal, and you should heal, and remarkable things are waiting for you. And that's what I would say is like, if you give it a chance, if you do the things, and let me tell you that I am not a person who necessarily is like super woo woo, but I really was like, listen, I cannot get out of this chair. Like I'm having a panic attack and my arms don't move. If she says I need to tap, I'm going to tap. Like I was at the point where I knew I could get no worse, but I knew I was hoping I could get better. And I got so much better than I thought. And you can too. So I guess I would just say like I had had a significant amount of childhood trauma, and then I had had like 3 really gut-wrenching, life-changing, terrible things happen to me within like the course of a year. I'm not saying that that's worse than anyone who's out there, but it was significant and it was painful. And so if I can have real relief after all of that, I think it's quite possible you can too. So that's what I'll say.
Wonderful, wonderful. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I'm not seeing any questions. So I do want to speak to you out there. If you are struggling with anything like what Kirsten is struggling with, I invite you to go ahead and book a call with me. And I will absolutely take a look at what you're struggling with, where you want to go. And if I can help you get there, I will absolutely show you what that would look like. And so I invite you to book a call if you're at that place where you're just like, that's it. I'm done with panic attacks. I'm done suffering. I'm done not being able to receive the love from my family and feel connected and be connected. If that's where you're at, absolutely go ahead and grab a spot on my calendar by going to rachelmcleod.com/call. And I'll put that in the notes there for you as well. And also, if you just want to understand the steps of how I help women get these changes, I've attached in the About section a webinar where I teach this stuff and I lay it out for you so that you really can understand what we're doing over here, why it works, and why it works so quickly. And so that's really what I want to share there. But I really want to thank you so much, Kirsten, for just opening your heart and your life and your mind to us and letting us see what that looks like. And really thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm grateful for you, and I'm grateful for this like community of women. I got to meet some pretty incredible people who have been so brave and have been so strong and have done amazing things. And I think that, that message is also pretty important, that I got to see a lot of people who had really significant transformations. And so it wasn't just me, it was also this like community. And I think that's pretty great. So
wonderful. She's talking about, I have an exclusive group of Facebook community just for my clients and those who have graduated. And so, and in there, because I love them and I am nosy and I want to make sure they're inspired and motivated and they stay connected and supported, I offer free ongoing support, monthly support. And so they all get to meet each other and see each other month after month after month, just get wins. And it's really wonderful. I know you guys get a lot out of it, but I kind of feel like I'm just totally being selfish. I am self-serving.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and if I'm ever getting a little lazy, there's nothing like a bunch of women like striving for the things they want most to make me be like, wow, like look what you're doing. That's amazing. Okay, I'm having a better day. Like it's pretty great.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. And did you feel like you got enough support in the program?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, Yes. And, there was some times during the program where I had to deal with like some extra wacky family business. And you were just great about, you were super flexible. You fully understood what I was going through. I remember you saying, like, if you need to check in this week, because I know you got stuff going on. Like, I really did feel like I had support and like, um, I was kind of, I really appreciated being able to kind of take things at my own pace. So, like, I have lots of time on this day to work on stuff. I have zero time on that day, and that works just fine. So I felt like there was some flexibility there, and I always knew that you were like waiting for me. If stuff was like, if I felt like things were going haywire, I could have shot you a line at any point, and I did a few times. So
Right. That's right. That's right.
yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Take care.
Good night.
Bye, everybody. See you soon.